Welcome to the Breakup Recovery Podcasts by your host, Barbara Stevens. Discover the wisdom and remarkable insights of Barbara Stevens, breakup recovery mentor, author, and public speaker. Barbara offers programs and solutions for any breakup so you can turn your life around, create lasting changes for the better, and embrace life again.
Welcome to Breakup Recovery Podcast. Thank you for joining me. I'm Barbara Stevens, and Breakup Recovery is a podcast helping you recover from your breakup. In this episode, I welcome Stacy Brookman. Stacy, you help people with tough life situations tell their stories. How does that help a person recover from a difficult situation?
Oh, that's a great question, Barbara. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I know that telling your stories helps you to heal from a breakup much quicker and with more thoroughness than if you just kind of got past it. You know, friends and family will tell you, oh, just get over it, or you'll get over it, or time will heal all wounds. And that is not necessarily true. But when you take the time to write about what happened, this is not necessarily for publication, although you can if you want to. But when you take the time to write what happened and your feelings about it and things like that, you can recover much quicker. I take people through a step-by-step process to do that because science has proven that writing your feelings out, writing your stories will actually even increases your immune system. Not only helps the psychological and physiological aspects of you during a very troubling time, but it really actually increases your immune system.
Can you think of an example how your process has helped someone get over their breakup or divorce or separation?
Yes, lots of people in my classes, but I use my own example primarily because I was going through a very traumatic divorce with a sociopath, someone who was actually certified as a sociopath. And as you can imagine, it was incredibly, incredibly difficult. We had 2 children. I just didn't want them to be hurt. And I was, in danger of losing my kids. I mean, it was very stressful. In fact, at one point, he had said, I'm going to take the house, I'm going to take the kids, I am going to take you down. So I lived in fear for about 2 years. Actually, for longer than that, I was afraid, but we finally were able to get separated. But during that time, I took a memoir writing class. So I just thought, okay, I just need some sort of outlet, which is fine. But I had no idea how incredibly beneficial it was to be able to write out my stories. I brought them every Friday and just laid them out on the table. And the people in my class were incredibly supportive. And even more than that, writing out my life stories each week, here's what's happened to me. They were crazy stories. Helped me to see what was really happening. When you have traumatic things happening to you or have in the past, parts of your brain shut down and the other parts come alive that aren't supposed to be, actually that active. And you begin to just act and not think. And that causes a lot of problems. So what I did was, as writing it down every single week, here's what's happened. It helped me to be very clear on what was happening and very clear on the next steps. I actually discovered my life theme by doing that. We went through some exercises, and my life theme had always been, or I thought was, hey, I'm a professional woman. I've come up in the company that I was in, etc. But my real life theme, my true life theme that I had been living out to that date was, I didn't raise my hand, which is how I got in that situation in the first place. I didn't say no, and I don't think that's right. From kindergarten on, I was taught not to raise my hand, and that carried on into adulthood, and it was damaging to me personally. But once I realized that was my hidden life theme, my real life theme, I was able to change it. I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like not standing up for myself. And when I put these things down on paper, black and white, it's a lot clearer and you can then act on that.
Stacey, just going back a little bit to we're married to a sociopath, how did you gain the strength to actually end the relationship?
Ooh, if I had known how hard it was, I don't even know if I would. Actually, I needed to. I'll tell you the story, how that happened. We were married for 10 years, and it was a very difficult marriage, and I wanted to stick around. I wanted to stay for the long haul, and I can do it. I'll make this succeed. It's, what do we all tell ourselves when really we're not ever going to be able to change that other person? Well, my 8-year-old daughter wanted to get on the computer, and so I helped her get through the password, and I found an email on that computer. It was our family's computer, and it was to my husband's email address. And the subject line clearly indicated that he was putting himself out on Craigslist for couples as a play toy. And I'm like, oh my goodness, no way. This is not happening to me. And at that moment, I said, you know what? I need to not only do this for myself. My health could be in danger. I didn't know he was doing that sort of crazy stuff. But I didn't want my girls to think that this was normal. I didn't want them to grow up. And I know that that tends to happen. If whatever you do, your kids tend to end up in the same situations. And I desperately did not want my girls to have the same type of marriage that I did. And that's spurred me on.
Wow. And you found the whole process of leaving a sociopath very difficult?
It was. In New York, whoever leaves the home first is considered abandoning the home. So we actually stayed in the same house for almost an entire year until the court ordered him to leave. When he did, he came back in and cut the wires in the middle of winter for our heater and then called Child Protective Services. He stole every scrap of memory I had for the girls, all of their photo albums that I had created, all of the bank papers. I mean, throughout that, he stole everything. When you're at rock bottom, I'm like, there is nothing left that he can take except the girls, and he tried to do that as well. Finally, after 2 years of trying to get divorced, the courts were like, this is in the kids' best interest for me to leave with the kids and leave the state. And that's exactly what I did. I had 2 weeks because my attorney said, you know what? He could appeal. She said, you need to find a job and get out of here within 2 weeks. And I did.
Wow, that's a very drastic move, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was very stressful.
And what do you think your process was to get through that difficult time and to be able to move on in your life like you have done?
Well, I look back at my stories. I continued with that class. They loved my stories so much that they actually invited me back for the second semester for free. They gave me a scholarship. And I found that process to be very valuable to me because once you get that out, it's not eating you up inside. And I don't know if you've ever felt this or your listeners have ever felt this, just your stomach's churning, your mind is awash with a lot of different things. You've got to do this and do that. You've got to take care of this, or things aren't going your way. When you can write that out, you will be much calmer than otherwise because it helps you organize your thoughts. It helps you name what you're feeling. And when you can name what you're feeling, then you can address it much easier. And so I did that for years afterwards. And even I started studying, why is this so beneficial? And there's a lot of science behind it. And I started teaching it at the local community college, and I've been doing it ever since.
Do you believe that because of your divorce and how difficult it was, it helped and guided you into a whole new career?
Oh, absolutely. I would not have my own podcast. I would not have my courses, etc., if I had not gone through that. So, looking back, it really did me a favor by doing that. Because, I have a heart for people who are going through traumatic times or who have been through traumatic times, and I want to help them discover, even if they're not writers at all, I want to help them discover that writing through your stories, writing about your stories is so beneficial. It's like a therapist right there with you. If you can't afford a therapist or, I would write. I actually had a therapist, but in between I would write, and it's so beneficial for you.
Is that why you started your blog, to put your stories out there into the public domain?
Well, actually, I was afraid. I was afraid to do that at first. So I would write my stories and put them on a blog that nobody knew about.
Your own personal blog.
It was a blog for one. So my blog now, some of it tells my stories and some of it tells where I'll dig into the research and help people understand why they should write their stories and how. People that have skeletons in your family closet, you should write about those as well. And so I blog about a lot of those types of things. And my podcast is called Real Life Resilience because writing helps people become more resilient. I have become more resilient through writing, and I want to share stories of resilience from life's most difficult traumas.
So tell me a little bit more about some of the stories that you cover in your podcast, Real Life Resilience.
Oh, my goodness, I have tons and tons. One of my favorite is one of my first ones, which is called The Prison Professor. A young man, he was 18, he was running drugs and got caught and went to prison. And he had a very, very long sentence. And he, felt sorry for himself. But along came the library cart, and he picked up a book about Socrates. And Socrates was talking to his friend in the book, and it said, basically, his friend said, "Why don't you get out of here? You can get out of prison," because Socrates was in prison. And Socrates said, "I took everything that society gave me and democracy gave me, and I can't continue to take and be disregarded. I have to pay my dues." And so that inspired this young man to want to be a good citizen. And so even though he still had that penalty, that prison sentence, he got his degree. He started writing books. He wrote 14 books. He wrote his own memoirs, and he helped other prisoners write theirs. And today he's free. He's out. He's in his 50s, I believe. And he's out, and he helps people. He helps prisoners either going into prison or coming out of prison learn to live with dignity with your sentence and become great citizens. And I absolutely love that because writing helped this young man age well and become a better citizen inside of prison. It's one of my favorite stories.
That is a fantastic story. So if the listeners of Breakup Recovery podcast want to take on board what you're talking about, writing their story, how easy is that process, and what do people have to do to start that process?
Oh, it's a lot easier than you think. For those people who have nightmares about 8th grade English, it is not about the writing and grammar at all. It is not about that. In fact, one of the things that I help people do is listen and figure out what their milestones are in their life. Just list 10, 15, 20 milestones in their life. And then list 5 or 10 desires you've had in your life. And then list some 5 or 10 conflicts that you've had in your life. So I help them write several lists, and then they start to see a theme, like I did, not raising my hand. A theme throughout their list says, okay, this must be my life theme. This must be my true life theme. And then they can say, you know what? I want to change that. And then they start taking those milestones and they will free write about it. And free writing is just setting the timer for 10 minutes and answering these questions, and just keep writing and don't lift your pen off the paper. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about punctuation or anything else. Just start writing. What did that point in time, that one moment in time that was really tough for you, what did you hear at that time? What were the sounds? What did you taste? Were you drinking coffee? Were you eating? What did you see? What did you smell? What did you feel and touch? And then what did you feel inside of you? So you're using all of the senses and you're developing that story. You're just writing junk down. And a lot of people say it's just nonsense. If you can't think of anything to write, you just keep on writing and write, I can't think of anything to write. But once you keep doing that, your brain cannot produce junk for very long. You will start to get to the golden nuggets. And then after you have all of that junk out you've written for 10 minutes, or if you can get to 20 or get to 30, even better, you might need to free write on that particular incident for several days in a row. And then once you do that, then you can craft that into a story and you start to see, oh, wow, that's what I was feeling. It really is pulling the wool off of your eyes, because as human beings, we have an incredible capacity for pulling the wool over our own eyes. I know I did it. And that's part of that limbic system, and that when you're in stress and trauma and your brain is affected. But when you write it down, it's in black and white and you can do something about it. It's a lot easier that way.
Great. If people want to find out more about what you do, Stacey, or even connect with you and find out what you offer, where can they find this information?
Well, sure. I am on Pinterest and Facebook, and my website is stacybrookman.com. That's STACYBROOKMAN.com, stacybrookman.com. All of my resources are there, and the blogs and the podcast, and I really invite everyone to come and take a look.
Thank you, Stacey, for coming on Breakup Recovery Podcast and sharing the information you have about writing your life story to help people recover from traumatic events in their lives. I think we can all take something away from that and also begin that process of writing everything down, like you said. So thank you once again for coming on.
Thank you, Barbara, and I appreciate you doing what you do in the world.
If you would like to hear previous Breakup Recovery podcasts, visit barbarastevens.com.au. Connect with Barbara Stevens on social media with Barbara Stevens Breakup Recovery Mentor on Facebook and at You'll Be Okay on Twitter. Read further blogs, view webinar replays, and download your free ebook, 3 Easy Steps to Surviving Your Breakup, and much more at barbarastevens.com.au.